Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. So I just wanted to start off by saying, sorry if I sound like a man, but I'm a little ill right now. I've done my makeup for this video and I'm not going to lie, I'm actually quite happy with it, which I'm not normally happy with my makeup, and obviously I would be happy with it when I've got to roll it off in half an hour whenever I finish filming this video. So I just quickly wanted to say, as I've had a few comments on on a previous video, that all opinions are my own, so in no way, shape or form am I saying that this is what is true. It's just my opinions, and it's all just information that I have done research on, and some of it might not be correct, and 100% I'm not saying that every single bit of information that I will say is correct, because it might not be. So I've wrote out a little thing that I'm going to try and say at the beginning of every video. I'm probably going to forget, but I'm going to try. So all opinions are my own. And this is all just information I have done my best to research and hope that it is correct. However, some may not be. I also wanted to add, I know I say it in pretty much every video, but my pronunciation is not the best, so I am sorry if the way I pronounce certain things offends you, but I do try my hardest. And I know that this is a long intro, but I just felt like I needed to put it out there, because I haven't had loads of comments, but I had 2 comments and it just made me think, maybe the way that I start my videos, I need to kind of put it out there, because the person was like, you're pronouncing their name wrong. Like, I probably already said in the video that I might pronounce it wrong, but either way, I'm putting it out there, so I can't please don't come for me if I say someone's name wrong. Another thing that I wanted to say is that I'm going to be doing shout outs at the end of my videos. So if you are interested in me shouting you out, then all you have to do is tell me in the comments below. I'm probably going to do about 3 per video. However, obviously, if people don't want shout outs, then obviously I'm not going to give them. But I just thought it'd help, because I know that I have quite a few of my subscribers are upcoming YouTubers themselves, so I just thought it might help if I'm able to give them a hand where I can by shouting them out at the end of my videos. So in today's video, as you've probably seen by the title, is the case of James Patrick Bulger, or Bulger, I don't know, don't come for me, I'm sorry. Now, this is probably one of the most upsetting and heartbreaking cases that I've ever looked into. Obviously, pretty much every single case I'm going to cover or have covered is heartbreaking to certain people. Obviously, the baby P case is probably up there with this one. I think it's just the fact that it's just younger children, really. I just don't understand, who would want to hurt, who would want to hurt anyone, but who would want to hurt, a 3-year-old child that can't stick up for themselves. So I do just want to warn people, if you are triggered by stuff like this, then this is probably not the right video for you. So if you're triggered by abductions or just child abuse or anything like that, really, I would click off the video. So before we start, make sure you give this video a big thumbs up, and please subscribe down below. Every single like and subscribe helps me so much, you guys don't even understand. I'm so grateful for every single one of you, and we are literally becoming such a lovely little family, and I'm so happy, because I do put so much effort into the research that I do. I spend days and days, which is why I'm thinking of changing my days that I upload to a Monday and a Friday, just because it literally takes days and days to research these cases, to try and make sure that the information is correct, to watch videos, to watch documentaries, to kind of teach myself instead of just writing down loads of information that I found on the internet, because it might not be true. So James Patrick Bulger was born in Liverpool on the 16th of March 1990, and like I said at the beginning, he was only 2 years old at the time of his death. So Liverpool is in Merseyside, Again, like, I might not pronounce that right, but I'm trying. Liverpool was in Merseyside, and this is in England. All of this is in England. Most of the cases that I will be covering, I'm going to try and be English cases, just because that's where I live personally. They're just, I'm interested in all cases, but they're kind of the ones that's more close to home for me, so I'm kind of interested in them more. So his mother's name was Denise, or Dennis, or Denise, I don't really know, but again, I'm probably just overthinking it now, but I'm going to say Denise Bulger. And his dad was Ralph Bulger. However, his mum and dad aren't together anymore, so his mum's name now is Denise Fergus. I believe that she's married to someone else. And from the information that I could find, James is literally described as the most energetic, joyful, happy, outgoing, the kindest little boy going. So on the 12th of February 1993, Denise and her brother's fiancé, I'm not sure what her name was, so she's not really in the story that much, so just her brother's fiancé. They went shopping at the New Strand shopping centre. The shopping centre was 2 stories high and it had over 100 different stores inside, so it was a pretty large shopping centre. So they went into 3 or 4 different shops before going into the butcher, where Denise wanted to buy some meat for their tea. The butcher was called, I believe it's A.R. Times. It's Tymes, so I presume it's Times. I'll just say Times. And this was at 3:40 PM. And she also wasn't planning on going to any other shop, so this was going to be her last shop before heading home. So obviously James was only 2, so this was actually his first time without a pushchair, out and about. So Denise was holding his hand like everywhere because he's a 2-year-old and he could wander off at any moment. And in the butcher's, she literally let go of his hand so she could get her purse out, she could get the money out to give to the butcher, she could take the goods from the butcher. Obviously if she had change, she would put the change away. And then she turned around to get James and he was gone. So obviously because he's only 2, straight away she started panicking and worrying, thinking that he could be anywhere, he could have gone anywhere. Like, she didn't know, someone could have taken him. So obviously this is when her search around the shopping centre started. She decided to go to the reception, or information desk, I'm not really sure, just a reception, to ask them if they could do it on their speaker thingy that they use. And she described what he looked like, what he was wearing, how tall he was, what colour his hair was, she just described everything to try and help to find him. So at around 4:15 there was a call out that he was missing, in the hopes that someone in that shopping centre would have seen him out and no witnesses came forward. And by this time, of course, police had been called. I don't really know when she called them. I would have thought it had been pretty near the beginning, so I'm not really sure. So obviously everyone was searching the shopping centre trying to find James and so the police obviously looked outside the shopping centre and they thought that if there was any evidence, it would be outside the shopping centre, because if someone had taken him, there might be evidence, someone might have seen him, might be able to shoot. Because if someone's taking the child and the child doesn't know them, like, you'd think that they'd be kicking off, because they didn't want to go with that person, because they don't know him. So there was helicopters, police patrol, there was friends and family, and at this point Denise was the only one that wasn't really looking, because she had been taken into the police custody for questioning, as any missing persons case kind of, the parents are first to be questioned, because it could be something to do with them. If they're the last one to see them, it could be something to do with them. After hearing what she had to say, the police then the next day went through all the shops just to see that he could have been locked in, he could have been hiding, he could have fallen asleep, because he was only 2, so I'm pretty sure at 2 children still have naps, so he could have been hiding, sleeping, or just locked in, but there was no luck. So about 24 hours after James was reported missing, the shopping centre decided to look at their CCTV. Obviously they knew pretty much the exact time they needed to look at, so they started looking, and this is when they spotted James leaving the shopping centre with 2 younger boys. But this was back in 1993, so obviously CCTV now still isn't that good. Like, obviously you can, some CCTV obviously is good, but majority CCTV you can kind of see, but it's not the clearest. However, this was obviously a big lead because she was able to identify James by what he was wearing. So the CCTV then obviously got released, and no one came forward about recognising these 2 boys. About 2 days later, 2 13-year-olds were walking down by the railway tracks when they found James's body, and obviously straight away they ran to the police station. Obviously they would have been distraught. This is 2 13-year-olds who just spotted a toddler or anyone like on the railway tracks dead, like clearly dead. Since then both have post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and they do blame it on this, and since then they have both got into crime and have had various other problems with the police. They released the information that they knew about the abduction in the hopes that someone would be able to have seen these 2 boys with James. Over 60 young boys were questioned between the ages of 13 and 16, because that's the age kind of roughly they believed these 2 boys to be. And this wasn't obviously just normal boys, because there was probably more than 60 normal boys in the area that was between them ages, but it was boys who had already had like problems with police, and again they received nothing. So a few days went past and the police finally received their first tip, their first lead, basically the main thing that completed this case. So a woman called in claiming to be the friend of Susan Venables, and she claimed that the one child was Susan's son John Venables, and the other boy was his friend Robert Thompson, and they had both arrived to school together on that day. So this is where I thought that I would give you some information about the boys' backgrounds. So John Venables was born on the 13th of August 1983, so he was 10, guys, he was 10 years old. He was the second of 3 children. He had a younger sister and an older brother, and they both had learning disabilities. So at the time of James's murder, John's parents weren't actually together. They was apart, and John's mum, I'm pretty sure he was living with his mum as well. They was living with her mum because her mum was old and her husband had died, so she was just looking after her, and it gave her somewhere to live at the same time. So Susan spent all her time looking after her 3 children. 2 had disabilities, and she looked after her mum as well. And both of the siblings attended special needs schools, whereas he just attended a standard, average primary school. And from what I could see in research, John wanted to kind of be more like them. He would rock back and forward on his chairs, make weird moaning and grunting noises. He would run around, he would flip tables. And one time he actually tried to strangle another classmate with a ruler, and it took 2 teachers to kind of separate it. He wanted to move to the special needs school because at the time he was getting bullied in his neighbourhood and at school. So at this time he wanted to kind of go there because he thought that there would be no bullying. And obviously there would be bullying, there's bullying everywhere, but obviously it would be a lot less than just an average school. His mum started drinking, and for attention he used to cut himself and his socks with scissors just for attention, I think. And at one point, because he was being so naughty at school, his mum actually took him out of school for 10 days for a punishment. And I'm not really sure how much of a punishment this would be, because he didn't want to go to school because he was getting bullied. So this, if anything, this was like amazing to him because he was out of school because he didn't want to be in school. And eventually she took him out from that school and placed him into a different school, and this is where he met Robert Thompson. So Robert Thompson was born on August the 23rd, 1983, and his family was a lot bigger than John's. There was 7 children, he was the 5th of 7, and his dad was an alcoholic and would abuse and beat his mum in front of them. His mum actually married his dad because her father used to beat her, so she married him to get out of that situation, and then obviously she got back into it, and I feel sorry for people like that, I really do. And because of this, she ended up taking her anger out on her children, so she would beat them with weapons and just objects and sticks and all sorts of stuff. She would just beat them with whatever she could find. And Robert's father actually ended up leaving. A week after Robert's father ended up leaving, the house actually burnt down in an accidental fire. And of course this would have put 10 times the amount of stress on Anne, so she would have been feeling worse than what she already did. And she went on to try and commit suicide, and she turned to alcohol. So both boys' mums were on alcohol, and most of the time she left her children to provide for themselves. So obviously this wouldn't have happened, because if Robert's 10 and he's the 3rd oldest child, the others probably weren't much older than him if she managed to have like another 4 after him. So this is when the oldest started beating the younger ones, and then they would beat the younger ones, and then they would beat the younger ones, and pretty much all of the children got into crime. They would shoplift regularly, and one time Robert's older brother took him to the same shopping centre as he abducted James from, and he abandoned him there and just left. And this left Robert traumatised. And because these 2 boys were only 10, the police did not think in any way that they had anything to do with his disappearance, so they just wanted to get him in to question them, and then they wanted to be able to rule him out. As soon as the police started asking the boys questions, they both started crying and acting up and kind of acting really suspicious. So this is when the police arrested. However, they was both sent to different police stations, so I suppose this way they couldn't make up different things to say, I don't really know. They both denied everything to start off with. However, Robert was the first to admit that they had taken James and killed him. However, he blamed it all on John. He said that John was the one that done all the torturing, and he was also the one who abducted him. And apparently he claimed to have begged John to take James back to his mum. However, at this point John was still denying everything. And as soon as the police told John that Robert had admitting everything, John started freaking out, hitting his dad, shouting, screaming, crying. So the police could clearly see that he didn't want to admit it, especially with his parents in the room. So this is when the police asked his parents to leave the room, and they said to him that they would love him no matter what. This is when John admitted to abducting and murdering James. However, he blamed it all on Robert, so he said that Robert done everything and he was just there. So at this point, no matter what the boys now said, they had both of their confessions. Whether they was going to keep blaming it on each other, at this point they didn't think they was going to get anything that happened out of it really. But they knew that they was involved. They knew they was involved. Altogether, there was 38 witnesses that came forward with leads that they saw the boys with James that day walking towards the railway lines. So the police used witnesses and forensic evidence, and they found that the blood on Robert's shoelace, that there was blood on Robert's shoelace, and this was the same shoelace that had an imprinted mark on James's face. And there was also paint left in James's eye. So on the 12th of February 1993, John Venables and Robert Thompson had been skiving from school, and they had been at the shopping centre shoplifting. They had stolen many items, however 2 of the items were batteries and paint. When James and Denise were waiting to get their photos like, you know, the old-fashioned film thing. They was waiting for that downstairs, and upstairs John and Robert had attempted to abduct another little toddler. However, the toddler's mum caught them and called her child back, so they didn't get away with that one. So then obviously they abducted James outside the butcher's. The first plan to kill James did not work. As soon as they got outside, they tried to push him in front of the car to get him run over, and it didn't work. The next thing they then done was take him to the nearby canal, and they was telling him to look into the water, so he was kneeling into the water in hopes that he would fall and then drown. But again, that didn't work either. So at this point, they was beating the absolute into James, and many witnesses actually seen this happening. So this is 38 people who saw this. So why was the police not told? Like, I'm confused why they didn't go over to the boys and kind of be like, look, what are you doing? Like, this is a little child. Like, one woman did go over to them, and then they just said that it was their little brother crying who had fallen over and was crying for his mum, so they was trying to find their mum. And the woman was just like, okay, like, whatever, and then walked off. And then there was another woman who came over, who obviously asked them again what they was doing, which was when they said they don't know the child and that they was taking the child to the police station because he was hurt. This woman just said, okay, as long as you go back to the police station. What? If that was me, yeah, and someone said that to me, I would take them to the police station. Like, I'm not even an adult, but I would take them to the police station if it was some little child. And these boys, the police and everyone said that they looked about 8. So these two boys that look about 8 and this like little child, this little baby, walking around the streets on their own, you didn't bother to question them. So when they got to the railway, they abused James. They done lots of horrific stuff. They must have done some stuff with paint. There was batteries found actually, and I'm not really going to go into too much detail about that because it just makes me want to cry. How anyone could do that to another person, let alone like a little baby. So James was beaten so badly that there was 24 injuries to his head, and because all of the injuries to his head were so severe, they wasn't actually able to tell which one was like the one that killed him. However, they also, when they found James's body, his bottom half was undressed. So the police do think that this was actually a sexually motivated assault as well, kind of. And by now, James was, obviously, he would have been dead. And after he was dead, they put him onto the railway track, waited for a train to run over him and cut him in half. And then they left because they wanted to make it look accidental. Obviously not thinking that they were still going to examine the person's body anyway to see if that was how the person died. So the boys were charged with the abduction and murder of James Bulger. To begin with, they was both known as Child A and Child B because so many people hated them and had it out for them that the judge said that they aren't to be named. And by now the police knew that it was Robert who actually killed James, and it was John whose idea it was to abduct him and whose idea it was to put him on the railway. So the trial lasted 17 days, and on the 14th of November 1983, both boys being 11 at this time, both of them was convicted of the murder and abduction of James Bulger. And this is something I find quite interesting. John was actually crying in the courtroom, however, Robert didn't seem like he cared at all. If that was me getting convicted for murder, like, I'd be distraught. This is when they was both sentenced to 8 years and their real identities were released, as well as their school photos. However, they knew that they'd get given new identities as soon as they had finished their time. These being £1.5 million each. So 2 not innocent people were going to get new identities for free and get to live a whole new life for free. There was also a law that if anyone was to release their new identities or any information about them, they would face prison time themselves. I think it was 2 years. Wow, up to 2 years. And obviously no one was happy with these sentences. Like, they got 8 years for torturing this child. And they also tried to abduct another child as well. So their sentences were renewed and up to 10 years just because of all the publicity and stuff like that. And then people still wasn't happy with this. Like, 10 years for killing a child, it wasn't enough. And personally, I don't think it's enough. So the government actually stepped in and raised it to 15 years, which again is still not enough, but it's more. But the government weren't actually allowed to do this, so then it got re-put back down to 10. So they was at 10 years. And the boys' lawyers said that because the information was released to the public, they felt like they didn't have a fair trial. And this is when John Venables is compensated £29,000 and Robert was compensated £15,000. So when they got out, they would have had that money waiting for them. Like, I don't know yet. I don't know if you've watched my last video, but if you haven't, then you need to watch it. It'll probably be in the eye, or it'll be on my page, obviously. What is it with murderers getting compensated money for killing someone? That is just going to give them all the more rights to go and kill more people. Like, why don't these families get compensated this money when they're losing a family member, a child? But instead it's the people who actually committed the murder. And in this case, they had the proof that it was them. And in the end, the court came to the decision that it would be, I honestly don't know what it's called, but it was something to do with Her Majesty. So she basically got to say how long they had to stay in there, when they could come out. And yeah, so they would have probably 8 years. So they was both in separate facilities. However, this next bit is frustrating as hell, because what they were staying in would have been better than their homes. So they had food, they had TVs, they had video games. They even got to decorate their own rooms and choose the decorations that went in their rooms. And 1 month after them actually getting sentenced, they was allowed on days out. They went to the cinema, parks. Robert went swimming once a month because that was his favourite hobby, and he would then go to McDonald's after, again being treated. And they was both given money to go designer clothes shopping with. But they wasn't even getting this in their old life, so to me this sounds like they wanted them to like come out and then recommit these crimes. One confusing thing as well, obviously they would have been adults when they were still in prison. They never got put into an adult prison. They stayed in this holiday kind of until they was released, and then obviously they got out and their identities were changed. And Robert has not actually really been heard of since. I think he had a boyfriend, and they've just gone off together, and I don't really know what they're doing. There's not really any information on them. However, John has reoffended many times. In 2008, he was arrested for possession of Class A drugs, being like cocaine, and another time for being drunken and disorderly. In 2010, he pleaded guilty to possession of child pornography, and he was sentenced to 2 years in prison. When the boys was in their when they was having their sentence, they was told they're not allowed back to Merseyside. They aren't allowed contact with each other, and they're not allowed to release their identities. And John was back in Merseyside all the time. He was going to bars, meeting people. He was doing everything that he shouldn't have. He did actually release his new identity twice, I think, and they paid for him to get new ones. Yes, they paid for him to get new ones. And then after this, sometime, he pleaded guilty again to over 300 Category A child pornography photos, 148 Category B photos, and 600 Category C. And after this, he was sentenced to another 3 years in prison, and then that leads us to today. So that is the end of the case, and it's a very a heartbreaking case, to say the least. It's hard, really. Basically, your children are not safe with anyone. Like, you'd think that these two innocent 10-year-olds are not going to do anything to your child. Like, you wouldn't even think that they would, I don't even know, kidnap the child. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, you wouldn't think any of this. And for this to happen definitely makes you more wary and cautious of who you're trusting your child around, no matter how old your child is and no matter how old the other children or person is. So that is the end of my video. I do hope you all enjoyed this video. Again, I know it's a bit weird saying I hope you enjoyed, but I do hope you enjoyed. Please give it a big thumbs up and please subscribe down below. And also, if you've stayed this long, thank you so much. If you have, make sure you put it in the comments that you've stayed this long, and I will definitely appreciate you. And that's it from me today, guys, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!